Hello and welcome to the Hope Hotspot. This is our regular podcast where we look at different things in and around Hope Church Luton. So I'm sat here today with Linda Geevanathan. You may know Linda as one of our leaders here at Hope Church, and she oversees a very important area of the church that we've been developing over the last couple of years or so, called Good News to the Community. Now, that might not mean anything to you, but Linda is here to tell us what that's all about. So, Linda, what is Good News to the Community?
So, Good News to the Community is basically the work that Hope Church does with its local immediate community, particularly those who are in need. And we've been running Open House Lounge for many years. Teresa Middleton started it many years ago, but it's almost developing that and looking at how we do Open House Lounge, but link it to our 4 o'clock service, which we run particularly for people from our community. It's a shorter service. How we develop our links with other charities in Luton like Azalea and, just other local groups. So Good News to Community is basically our work with the local community.
Great, cool. Okay, so why does it exist? Somebody might say, well, do we not do this anyway as a church? But why is there this thing called Good News to the Community?
So over the years, we have realized that ministering to people who live in open despair, things like who live with addictions or in particularly poverty-ridden lifestyles, or are street workers, or just struggle to build relationship, or even really struggle with mental health and that kind of those kind of issues. Well, it takes a special approach. It takes more time and care and thought about how we share the gospel with them. And for most of the people in our local community, or for some of the people in our local community, to walk into a church on a Sunday morning is a very intimidating thing. To not have a break at some point to go out and have a quick cigarette is actually really difficult for them. To sit and listen to someone preach for half an hour is something that they haven't done since they were back in school. And so what we've done over the last few years is look at how as Open House and as our 4 o'clock service, and in terms of community areas, how we can support them in loving people who actually live in open despair and need support and love and care and protection in a different way to other people in the church who might be more middle class or live with more hidden despair, if that makes sense.
Right. So, essentially, so what you're saying here is that it's a sort of bridge between people who are maybe unchurched, haven't grown up with a church experience, or maybe they have and it's been a very traditional church experience whereby they think that they can't walk into a Sunday morning service or wouldn't feel welcome because of their problems or the things that they're dealing with in their life. Is that what you would essentially say is kind of we're trying to do here?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're trying to do is make the bridge from our local community into church a little easier and a little shorter and more supported, and actually help some of our local community actually walk that bridge. So hold their hand as they get to know other people in the church and realize that church is actually a really loving, friendly place. One parable that's very clear about God's love and compassion for the poor is in Matthew 25, the parable of the sheep and the goats. And in that parable, it is very clear that the King, God the Father, will actually say that those of us, or those who took time to love and feed and give water to and clothe and visit those in need, are actually performing those acts to Jesus. And that those who say they love God the Father but ignore those who are hungry or need a drink or need clothes or are ill or need a visit in prison or whatever it is, those are the ones that Jesus will say in eternity. He will say, actually, you depart from me, for you did not know me. You are cursed. And so we want to be a church that doesn't just say with our words we love God the Father. We want to, with actions, love those around us, because that's what Jesus calls us to do.
Great. And you've obviously mentioned the 4 o'clock service. So, I mean, Open House has been running several years now. We've seen that grow. I'm sure people are well established in the church with what that is. 4 o'clock has been running for about a year and a half now. Maybe people aren't so clued in as to what happens there. Maybe do you want to just give an example of our 4 o'clock service?
Yeah, so our 4 o'clock service is actually around an hour long, and it's a lot of socializing. So we spend about 15 to 20 minutes from 4 till about 4:20 just eating cake, talking, and just getting to know each other. We often have new people coming in. We can have as many as 5 people, or sometimes we've had up to 30, and so it just depends on the Sunday. Then we would introduce a time of worship, where we would sing a couple of songs, maybe read from the Bible, have a time of thankful prayer. I mean, if you imagine it, most of the people, or half at least of the number of people there, don't really know God, or they are very, very young in their walk with God and have only in the last few weeks or months come to know him. So it's a very different atmosphere to Sunday morning church, where everybody is in love with Jesus. This is kind of an introduction to who Jesus is. We would then, after a couple of songs and maybe some Bible reading, we would go into a preach, which often our preachers use a lot of storytelling, and we introduce who Jesus is and concepts that are key in the Bible. And the preach would be no longer than about 15 minutes again. And then and that would be it. We'd have another coffee break at some point and a cigarette break at some point, and then we would go back.
Cool. Just to rewind a bit, so obviously that's a lot of the stuff that we do as Hope Church here, but I understand that you also work with what we might call parachurch organisations, which are other organisations that have a Christian ethos or a Christian background that we work quite closely with in Luton in order to do this work.
Yeah, we also direct or signpost people to other groups that we know will support them and help them with whatever issues they may have. So we work alongside Signposts, Noah, and particularly Walk to Freedom. We have Annie, who comes in to Open House once a week and does a craft activity for anyone here to join in and just be part of, and it's kind of a well-being but craft as well activity. We also refer people to Walk to Freedom who we know are trying to walk free from drugs but are struggling and have fallen back into addiction or addictive behaviours, and so we've referred members of our 4 p.m. or our Open House clientele almost to Walk to Freedom as well. So we do try and signpost people to the right organisations, charities, parachurches in Luton that can support them in a greater way than we can. So we are a safe place and a home almost. Open House is a home for many to come and find community and a safe place, but often they need signposting to different groups that can support them better with some of the things that they struggle with. As well as Signposts and Walk to Freedom, we also work with Azalea, which is a local charity that walks alongside women and men who are street workers working in prostitution. And Tony, Shirley and myself all speak at their weekly Rebuilt course, which is basically an alpha course for the women who are finding out about God, hungry to find out more and wanting to live transformed lives. And Azalea basically not only meets the practical needs of the women, but also their spiritual needs. So they try and tell them about Jesus, get them out of Luton and out of this, out of the cycle of street working. And they try to signpost the women and the men to churches where they can also become part of communities and get support walking free of the lifestyles that they're in.
Fantastic. And partnership work, as we've established in other podcasts, is a great way of making things happen, working with other organisations to move things forward where we might not be able to do everything. So say if somebody's listening to this from the church and maybe they're not part of the 4 o'clock service or whatnot, maybe they're part of our morning service, or maybe they're in one of our small groups, where can they get involved? What's their part to play in all of this?
So one of the key things is that we would love people to let myself know if they're interested in being on our prayer list, so that we can send you specific prayers for the men and women and the team that are part of Good News to the Community. But also, open house takes a lot of volunteer support, and we really do appreciate it, and we really are thankful for the men and women who come and serve in the kitchen, serve by just being here and talking to people who may not otherwise have anyone talk to them that week. Some of the people who come here are just very lonely and aren't part of community, and that's something that the church can really offer. So even if you work in the week, there's a Saturday morning where you can come once a month or every week, whatever you choose to do, to come and chat to people and just be here and serve as part of the team. But otherwise, we run open house on a Monday and a Wednesday, and we would love anyone who's free and can come and give any of their time to be part of the team. It's just such a blessing.
That's great. And the full details are obviously about everything about Good News to the Community and how to get involved are all on our website on hopechurch.co.uk. And well, it's been great chatting to you, Linda. I'm sure hopefully people will have learned a little bit about what Good News to the Community actually is, and that important element of our church community here. And thank you for speaking to us today.
Thank you, Luke. It was a pleasure.